We can traditionally start from saying our names. I'm Kat.
Dean, Mark,
Rishi, Christine Chow,
Gilbert,
David,
Ram.
And Bob.
Hi.
There we go.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Well, it's the old, same old, same old. And why is it the same old, same old? Because it couldn't be any other way. We talk about what they call, in the ancient text, non-duality. Non-duality meaning one without a second, not two. So if it's only one, what else is there to talk about? And who else is there to talk about it? Everything is already that. And people have made this mistake of taking themselves to be individuals, persons, separate entities. And that never ever was such a thing. And with the idea that they can become, or might become, enlightened.
I think you're going to be louder if you take it.
And recognise their true nature. One without a second. So that's why we say here, start from the fact, whether you know it or not, that is all there is, because if you believe you are the separate entity, the individual, the person, that's the mistake that's being made. And you'll say, I haven't got it yet, or this is not it, or I haven't, or can't. You never will. You never will get it, because there's no such thing as a person. Where does that word person come from? Doesn't it come from persona, the mask, our Latin language? So we've got the idea that I am that person or separate entity or individual, instead of realising that what we're talking about, non-duality, one without a second, not two, it is absolute. That is all there is. It's only that one essence. Patterning, shaping, forming, appearing, expressing as everything. And that's its ability or the capacity. That's what can happen. But the so-called person or individual can do nothing whatsoever. How does it come about? Well, we learnt words. And that's what that word person is, a word. How many words were you born with? You can't say you were born with any words. So that's why you can't remember your birth. People say they remember your birth, but there's no one that can remember your birth. You had no words to remember it by. And you didn't learn any words till you were about 2.5, when the capacity of reasoning developed upon you. That's the capacity that has come upon us, and we learn words. So the first 2 years of your life, you were living and functioning without any word. So recognise that and realise that, and you must realise, if you believe you are to be this person and the thought-up entity, that you're prior to thought. Because in those first 2 years you were without a thought. So you were prior to the mind. And we've got this idea we are this person, this body, mind. But are you the body? Well, already innately you know you're not the body, because don't you say my body? Don't you say my house, my car, my coat, my hat? You know damn well you're not the house, the car, or the coat, or the hat. Maybe you're not the body either. And when you investigate And that's another thing to realise, that the false cannot stand up to investigation. You believe in so many things, when you put them under investigation, if they're not facts, you'll see through them. They'll be seen for what they are, false. So, you got the idea that you are this person, this individual, this separate entity, and you had no words, and you didn't learn any words till you were 2.5, and have a look at the word. Is the word the thing? Is the word real? We've got all these concepts, ideas and images, all different words and different labels, but are they real? Is the word real? Well, are you the body? You know, my body. Are you the mind? You know, my mind. My body, my mind. But are you the body when you know my body? What's the body made up of? Investigate and see. You realise the body's made up of elements: air, earth, fire, water, space. Just like the elements around you. Well, try and separate yourself from those elements. Take the water out of your body. How long are you going to last without the word water? Or without the water, actual water in it? What is 60% water? You're not going to last very long without water in the body. The element of fire, the body temperature. You haven't got that body temperature not working properly, you soon get hypothermia and you'll die. Take the air, stop breathing. Hydrogen, oxygen in. More elements. How long does you last without the air? You're not going to last very long without that element either. Get off the earth if you can. Can you live off the earth? You can't. Get out of space. Can you separate yourself from space? You're not separate from space. So when you look at it, you're not separate from these elements, so what must you be? You must be those elements also. We've taken ourselves to be separate and apart from them. But in investigation, you are not separate. And realise that all this manifestation, which they call a phenomenal manifestation, a definition of phenomena is that which appears to be. And so they call it, again in Hinduism, Sat Chit Ananda Nama Rupa. The 5 factors. Sat is existence, Chit is consciousness, Ananda is loving to be, or the bliss of being, the Nama is the name you've given yourself, and the form is the body. So they Sat, existence, consciousness, bliss are the reality. Nama, Rupa, name and form are Maya, illusion. So this body-mind, this conceptual image of a body-mind you've got is illusionary. And yet we take it to be real. We believe that I am this person, I am this body, I am this mind. Have a look at that. You see you're not the body. Body's made up of elements. All those elements can be broken down to subatomic particles into pure energy. So this body is nothing but a vibrating pattern of energy. And I don't use the word God here. That's what we all take to be the one essence or the one essence. We call it God. It tells you in the Bible, in the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, the Word was God. That's all that God is a word, a label we've put on things. And have a look at all the different traditions and different scriptures. They've all got different labels on this word. Israelis, or the Hebrews say, Hear, Israel, is Lord thy God is one God, there's none other. The Muslims will say there's no God but God, Allah is his name. The Hindus will have this 1,000 names of Vishnu. The Buddhists will say it's non-conceptual, ever fresh presence awareness, and all got different labels for this term God. But God is just a word, and you know that. All things were made by him. Well, have a look around you. The room we were in, the tree you're in, the chairs you're sitting in, the trees, the flowers, aren't they all words? All things were made by the word, and that's true. We've learnt words. How many words were you born with? You weren't born with any words. So every word you've spoken or ever likely to speak has been picked up along the way. And where have you learnt it from? You've learnt it from your parents. And your parents didn't know any better. They don't know that the word's not the thing. They've never looked at it. So we've followed on with the belief that we are this person. And taken on, I am Bob. That's what my parents told me. When that sense of presence comes upon me, what's the sense of presence? The knowing that you are. How was it expressed? How would you tell somebody who you are? You'll say, I am so-and-so. So that sense of presence is a conceptual image you have about yourself, which is translated as a word, I am. Instead of saying, I am the absolute, I am the great perfection, what can you add to the absolute? Nothing at all. What can you take away from it? Nothing at all. So that's what you are, the absolute. It's all the one essence. Or, as Buddhists put it, the great perfection. Perfection is the same as absolute. You can't add anything to the perfect, it wouldn't be perfect. You can't take anything away from it, it wouldn't be perfect. So it's the absolute and the great perfection are one and the same thing. And you know that. And isn't that the great mantra? I am that. That is what I am. And innately you know that also because everything is that. That's the chair you're sitting in. That's the room you're in. That's the space that's in the room. That's the tree. That's the flower. Everything is already that which we differentiated and discriminated with the word, which is not the real. And how many words you were born with? You weren't born with any word at all. And you didn't pick up words till you're about 2.5. So you lived for the first couple of years of your life without words. But the knowingness that I am is there. So Sat, Chit and Nanda, Sat is existence. Chit is consciousness. Ananda is bliss or loving to be is another term for it. And the Nama Rupa, the name and form, as they say in the scriptures, it's Maya. Body, mind is Maya. Maya is illusion. It only appears to be so. Are you the body? And you'll say my body. Just the same as you say my house, my car. Who's saying my body? Is it the so-called person? Or is it that innate intelligence, that knowing that you are, that translates it as the thought, my body? The person can say my body, and that's the problem. We take the person to believing they are the body. We are the separate entity, they are the individual. But there was never anything, and never can be anything, or never ever will be anything separate from it. You are already that, because that is all there is. And that can express, vibrate and pattern in many different pattern shapes and forms. And it does. And it appears in its so-called human form, which we call I or me. And we call ourselves a human being. If you call yourself a human being and you've got the concept of God, what have you done with all the belief and ideas and concepts we have about this thing called God? God is greater than we are. God is a higher power, a supreme being. So you call God the supreme being and you call yourself a human being. Let's see the bullshit of that. Take away the word human, take away the word supreme. Now separate the beingness if you can. Is there anyone in this room right now can say that I am not? You can't. You know that you are. Right here, right now, you are that pure being. You're not the body, you're not the mind, you're not the conceptual image you have about yourself. You're not all these stories and thoughts and concepts that we made up and believe in and torture ourselves with and beat ourselves up with. You are the absolute and can only and ever and always and all will be that, because that is all there is. Now, where does it all come from? It all appears on that basic screen. That basic screen of space. That space is silent and still, it's empty. Silence, emptiness, stillness, space. That's why they call it, in Buddhism, space-like awareness. And they give it to you there in one sentence. The great perfection is non-conceptual awareness. It's that awareness without any concepts, words, thoughts or ideas on it. Just pure being. Anyone who's not being right now, no. You realise you are being. But are you being this or that or anything other? Or is it just that pure being without any conceptualisation? So, who's seeking what? Who is the seeker? The concept that I am. I am is a separate entity, this individual. And I have to become realised or recognised or know my true nature. But it's the conceptual image that you've got about yourself which we believe to be true or real. But can an image become the thing? Nisargadatta tells you nothing can trouble you except your own imagination. And that's very true. It's an amazing and wondrous statement. Have a look at it. Break that word imagination down to imagine, imagine, and realise, isn't that what's going on? We're creating conceptual or mental images all the time. Got an image of that and an image of this, I'm so-and-so and this is so-and-so, all conceptual images. And we believe those images to be real. But what's an image? Well, have a look in the mirror. What do you see in the mirror? Reflections or images. Now have a look. You can't say they're not there. But you go up that mirror and try and grab an image out of the mirror. You can't grab an image out of the mirror, so you can't say it is there. So it is, you can't say it is, you can't say it is not. It appears to be so. And isn't it the same with all this manifestation? It's all appearing to be so, just like a dream. You go to sleep at night and you dream a dream. In that dream there can be hills, there can be rivers, there can be mountains, on the sea or the lake or the ocean. Anything at all can appear in it. And to see the body that you believe yourself to be, taking an active part in, doing all sorts of things, all sorts of activities, all sorts of things. But when you wake up in the morning, where does it all go? It all disappears. That's what you don't realise is you wake up to this dream. And this is the waking dream. This is the dream that's seemingly real. And why does it seemingly real? Because the dream you had at night, when you wake up in the morning, you realise your body hadn't moved off the bed, no words had come out of your mouth, and it all disappears. But you wake up in the morning and this is the seeming continuity of the dream that was going on yesterday. It has a seeming continuity every morning from where it left off. And so we take it to be real. And we take the dreamed character, the me, to be real also. But the Nisargadatta says, have a look at that. He says, you're dreaming a dream you call the world. And he says, stop looking for ways out. The dream is not your concern. Your concern is you love one part of the dream and not the other. He says, love all of it or none of it. Just leave it as it is. Love all of it, and the rest will be done for you by the same life essence that's brought you to where you are at this moment. It's living you, breathing you, beating your heart, growing your hair, fingernails, digesting your food, doing all of these things spontaneously, naturally and effortlessly. And have a look at that. What are you doing about taking your next breath? You're thinking about it? You're concerned about it? You're not. It just happens spontaneously. What are you doing about beating your heart? Again, nothing. It's beating naturally, effortlessly and spontaneously. Just the same as when this body, mind you call yourself to be the real, how did it come into existence? Well, you go back and have a look as far back as you like, but you can go back as the closest to you, nearer to your father and your mother. When did you begin? We'll go back to that pattern you call your father, that pattern. The life essence vibrating through that pattern, expressing through it, through the food it's eating and the prana, the air it's breathing, enabled in that pattern a little microscopic particle called a sperm to form through that food essence and the breathing. Now that sperm essence was suffused with intelligence. It wasn't dead or blob of goo with nothing. It was suffused with intelligence. It knew what to do. The same pattern in your mother, enabled in that pattern again through the prana, the breath and the food she's eaten in that body, for another little microscopic particle called an egg or an ovum to form in that pattern. Now that ovum was suffused with intelligence. It knew what to do. It attached itself to the wall of the uterus. Attaching itself to the wall of the uterus and floating around with that, and the sperm, knowing what to do, swam to the ovum. It knew what to do. And when those two came together, what happened? That innate intelligence, that life essence in it, doubled that soul, redoubled it, and formed the little embryo, which is what you are today, and you don't realise. That embryo has changed, it's constantly transient, it's constantly changing right now. It's growing, transient, constantly changing. And that's what you are today. And you can't remember it. Why can't you remember it? Because you had no words then. And you didn't remember anything and will never remember anything until you learn the words. And we learnt the words and take the words to be the real and set ourselves up as this person, this persona, this mask, this conceptual image, and taken ourselves to it. Now, because we believe there's a higher power, there's something much greater than us, that we will become that. If we follow this tradition or that tradition or what all the so-called traditions tell us, come realised or whatever. But it hasn't happened. It doesn't happen. And why doesn't it happen? And to those it happens to, very rarely happens, they'll tell you that you'll never find the answer in the mind. You're not going to come by it in some way. You're not going to become anything. You're always going to be what you actually are, the pure being. In that pure being there is a knowingness, an intelligence, and there's a loving to be, an affectionate awareness of knowingness. And you are already that, have been and already will be. And the search implies there's something I'm going to get. I haven't got it now, but if I do this practice, or repeat this mantra, or go to this group, or learn from this, I will become something. But don't you realise becoming can never be being. Being can never become. And you know you are being right now. And if you're trying to become something, it doesn't happen. And where do we look? We look to where we've always looked since we got this capacity of reasoning and development. We look for the answer in the mind. But don't the scriptures tell you you'll never find the answer in the mind? They don't say it exactly that way, but they call it the peace that passeth all understanding. They say you will never ever get peace of mind. Why do they say that? Because when they tell you you'll never ever get peace of mind, because it can never be understood or grasped with the mind. The mind doesn't know anything about it. It's just the natural life essence. But we think if we can become silent or still or quiet, we will become something. But being is not becoming. Being is what is going on right now. And that being is knowing. And that knowing is loving to be. Take the being in the knowing. Aren't you knowing right now? What is the knowingness? The basic knowingness is I am. That's the primary thought. If you didn't have that thought, how could you express it? In the words we've learnt, we say I am, but without the word, isn't it that sense of presence there? Isn't the breathing happening? Isn't the life still going on in that body? What must you be? The body, mind, or the life itself? And didn't the Christ tell you, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life? People think, oh, he's talking about himself. I am, it's me. He's not talking about it, because have a look at that I am. What is it? Isn't it the sense of presence? Not the thought or the word. Isn't it the sense of presence, the knowing that you are? How could you express yourself? You've learnt words. If you didn't have that word, I am. How could you say who or what you were without the word? So that sense of presence expresses as the thought I am. So when he says I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life, he's pointing out it's that thought. It's not what you are, it's a thought that's translating it. And he called the I am, the sense of presence, the Father. And it's translated in the scriptures, which they make up balls of it. They say, no one can come to the Father except through me. And he wasn't saying that at all. If he was saying it in any way at all, he'd be saying, no one can recognise their true nature, and that's true. They come through that I amness, through the sense of presence, through the basic knowing that they are. And that's true. Until you understand that presence awareness, all the thinking, the conceptualising goes on. And we look for the answer in the mind, and they tell you the answer is not in the mind. That's why they call it the peace that passes understanding. Why would they call it that? Because it cannot be grasped or understood with a thought, with a concept. It can be known, and it's knowing is right now. But it can't be grasped with a thought. You try to picture with a thought, and we put a conceptual in it. I am Bob, the Australian, the good fella. I've done this and I've done that. People like me. All these concepts are added to it. And the concepts are just mental thoughts, mental concepts, ideas, images. They're not the real. We try to add, and the Nisargadatta says we try to grasp it with the. Nisargadatta tells again, we try to grasp it with the concept, and he says we fail. And he says you're bound to fail. Of course you're bound to fail, because it's non-conceptual awareness. It's awareness without any concepts. And while we're conceptualising and think we're going to become something, you'll never ever get it. You might believe you've got it. But belief is not the actual, and that's one of the worst things that happen. We take on these beliefs. But a belief is not the actual. And have a look at that. Look in the dictionary, and the definition of belief is that which... What is it? Definition of what?
Unquestioned acceptance of something.
Yeah. An unquestioned acceptance of something in the absence of reason. Acceptance of an alleged fact without any knowledge or proof. Put your belief to that test. Are you the body? Well, you haven't questioned it, but you know my body. But when you have a look at it, whose body is it? You see, you're not the body when you question. That belief won't stand under it. And a lot of other things we believed in. We believed that the sea was blue. We believed in the conceptual images, and the earth was flat, and all the other things. Well, many, many different things we believed in. When you question them, they fall apart. What we never question is, am I this person? Am I this body? Am I this mind? Well, am I? What's am I? Isn't the thought I am? What is the thought I am? Isn't that sense of presence, the knowing that you are, that translates as the thought? Somebody asks you who you are, you'll say, I am Bill, I am Bob, I am Jane or Jean or whatever my name is. That's how you translate it or express it. And you don't say, I am the absolute, I am the great perfection, is what you ever are. So we've broken ourselves down to a little conceptual individual, a separate entity that thinks it's going to become something. And it never ever happens. So start with the fact that you're already that. See how that works in you. Something comes up, not realising that it's transient. All this manifestation is transient. It's not time-bound. That's another thing we need to look at. We need to look at this concept of time and see if there is such a thing as time. Is there a past if you don't think about it? Well, you don't have to be a Rhodes Scholar to work that out. You can't say there's a past without a future. Is there a future if I don't think about it? You can anticipate and imagine a future time, but that anticipation and imagination is thought. So you see that time is a mental concept, past and future. And if you ask yourself what's wrong with right now if I don't think about it, well, you'd need to be prior to the thought or beyond the thought to see that. And realise this, you lived for the first 2 years or 2.5 years when it was without the thought, without the word. So you innately and already know you are prior to the word, you are prior to thought, you are prior to mind. But we've forgotten it, we've lost sight of it and take ourselves to be this mind and this concept and continually investigating, trying to become something which will never ever happen. Because basically there is only one essence, one intelligence energy. I call it intelligence energy, I don't use the term God. Because we've got all sorts of concepts about God. Hindus will call it 1,000 names of Vishnu. Muslims will say there's no God but God, Allah is his name. Christians will say it's omnipresence, omnipotence, omniscience, Father, Son, Big Daddy and the Holy Ghost. All sorts of different labels on that which is labelled. Pure intelligence energy, I call it, for want of a better name. And when I'm talking about intelligence, I'm not talking about your intellect. Because different intellects in this room, each one of us can have a different thing. I'm talking about the same intelligence that's functioning in the universe, that's rolling the earth around the sun, that's causing the seasons come and go, the tides to come in and out, the earth to revolve around and the seasons, the times, the places, the months and the years to come and go. That same intelligence is breathing you right now. It's beating your heart. It's growing your hair in your fingernails. Digesting your food. It's replacing cells in your body, just the same as it's forming the plants to form out of the seeds to grow, the trees to sprout into leaves, flowers and fruit, and all the different ways that innate intelligence is functioning, spontaneously, naturally, and effortlessly. But it's all transient. It doesn't last. What's your next thought going to be? You don't know. But it's changing. Thought is constantly changing. We don't realise that. So what happens? A thought comes up and we like it. And we don't want the thoughts we like, the good thoughts that we like, we don't want them to go. We want to keep them there. What do? We want to keep them there. We resist them from going. Trying to keep it there, we resist it. And don't you realise that any resistance you are in is conflict? You are in conflict. And when you are in that conflict and the resistance, it makes you uneasy, fearful, anxious, depressed, guilty, remorseful. Uneasiness is disease. So there's resistance, conflict and disease going on in us all the time. Something comes up and you don't like it. Oh, I shouldn't be thinking this thought, that's a bad thought. I don't need to think that, I should want to get rid of it and get rid of it. What do? We resist it again. Again in conflict, again fighting with it. So that's what our life is made up of, the turbulence, the conflict, resistance is going on all the time. The fear, the anxiety, the stress, the guilt, the unhappiness. All our psychological suffering comes about from this constant resistance that's going on. Constant resistance. What's wrong with right now if I don't think about it? What's wrong with right now if I'm in the deep sleep? Where's the resistance? Where's the conflict? And right now, if I happen to let the thought go free and not attach to it, and the silence, the stillness, the cognising emptiness is there in its fullness, what time or space for the anxiety, the stress, the guilt, the unhappiness, the fear, where's it going to abide if it's not fixated onto some conceptual idea? If it's left as it is, leaving it as is means it's unaltered, unmodified, uncorrected, just as it is. No guilt, no fear, no anxiety, no argument, no fight with it. And realise that as this conceptual idea is constantly changing, allow for the change. Allow for it to come about, but we don't. We fixate on it. We try to keep it there. We hang on to it, cling to it. And that trying to cling is the very problem that destroys us. We're in all sorts of anxiety, self-pity, fear, distress and guilt, psychological concepts and come up, call it all sorts of different things that can happen to us. It doesn't have to be that way. It never had to be that way. It's always and ever been the one and only, the great, what we call the great reality. And the great reality is spontaneous. It's this nowness. It's not a moment in the future or a moment in the past. It's this spontaneous moment. Life is spontaneous. That's why they say it's unafraid and free. It's not anxious, it's not fearful, it's not depressed, it's not guilty. And until that conceptual image is seen through and recognised and let go of, there is no freedom. Krishnamurti wrote a book years ago called Freedom from the Known. And there's truth in that statement, freedom from the known. That's what we know or think we know, the knowing right now is what we need freedom for. And seeing the known is dead, it's past. The knowing is the actual. And isn't there a knowing right now? A beingness, a knowingness, and a loving to be? And is there anyone who is not existing or being right now? No, you'll say, oh, I'm in being. Anyone who is not unaware or unconscious right now, you'll say, no, I'm conscious, I'm aware. Anyone who's not happy to be right now. And so, well, you wouldn't be dead for quids, so of course I'd rather be than not be. So I'm happy. So what I mean? You're already that. Why don't you recognise and take your stance there? Instead of poor me, if I do this, or repeat that, say this word and read this book, I will become. What does it say in the prayer? I will be done on earth. You certainly will be. Realise and recognise what you are. You're already that. Well, that's the spiel I gave. And some of you who are listening, some of you out there that are listening have got a good taste of it, fairly good grasp of it, might have some doubts or things come up, or you might be able to say it in a few different terms to what I do. And the way I'm saying is not the only way. It can be said in many different ways, and it is. And somebody else might say it a bit different and say the truth, and somebody will recognise it. And there might be doubts there. Don't hang on to the doubts, and don't be frightened of opening your mouth and saying something. A lot of us are frightened of opening our mouth, what they think of me, or they think I'm saying this. Take on the doubts. Let it out. Get it on your word, because it's only you that can say it. Nobody is ever going to do it for you. Understand that. Because there is nobody that can do it for you. You are all there is. You are the actual. You are the one reality that's patterning, shaping and forming and expressing through that as that particular pattern, shape and form, which is a unique pattern, shape and form and expression. But what happens if the life came into it, and as I say, you didn't know anything about it for the first couple of years, when the life goes onto it, what's going to happen to it? Where's it going to go? Isn't it going to go back to where it came from? There's no going to be any reincarnation or many future lives. It came out of the silence and the stillness, and it goes back into the silence and the stillness. And every pattern, shape and form that comes out is a fresh and new expression of it. So what must you be? The life goes out of that body, you call yourself a corpse. Well, you can't call yourself a corpse because you're out of it. You're a corpse. Now that corpse, before it rots, still got eyes, it's got ears, still got the heart, the lung, the kidneys, all the organs are in it. But what good are they without the life? And you realise they're not a bit of good to it without that element, the life essence, the life essence that is patterning, shaping, expressing through it. Then you might understand that you are not the body, you're not the mind, you're not the person, you are that life itself, the same life that you're seeing fashioning, shaping, forming and expressing all around you. As these other pattern shapes and forms, as the air and the thing, the trees, the flowers, everything is that life. And it's the one life that patterning, shaping and forming and expressing is everything. And without that life, that pattern wouldn't exist for a moment, and it doesn't. And there's no words can come out of its mouth until it expresses that pattern. No intelligence, no nothing. So it's the life itself. Just the same as good analogy is the computer. You've got a computer there with all that information into it, but you can run those keys over it as much as you like and punch that mouse as much. What are you going to get out of it if the power's not turned on? So you don't have to be a road scholar to work that out. What are you? The life itself, or the power which animates and forms that life? And work it out for yourself from there. Then you can understand when Christ was saying, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. He's not talking about himself, he's talking about that sense of presence. That sense of presence is with you right. Anyone who is not present and aware right now, no, you're right at home. Sitting right there, right here, right now, you are that. You can add to it what you like and take away from what you like and suffer accordingly. We can recognise what you are and let it do the living, patterning, shaping, forming and expressing as it is doing right now. What's your next thought going to be? You don't know. A thought comes up and you say, I think. As soon as you say, I think, what have you done? You've conceptualised a thinker. I am thinking this thought. A thinker. And it's the thinker that you believe is thinking that thought. So you've formed a subject and an object, a dualistic pattern. Subject-object, thinker and thought. But if you ask yourself the simple question, can there be a thinker without thinking? Well, can there? And you realise there can't be a thinker without thinking. And can there be a thought without thinking? So there can't be a thought without thinking. So it's that thinking, that life essence that's causing that thinking to happen. This is the life. The same with the seer and the seen. There is only seeing. The hearer and the heard. There's only hearing. Tasting, touching, smelling, fashioning, reasoning. The ing is the actuality. The I see, I hear, or I think, and all this, they're the false. They're the conceptual image. And the conceptual image can never become the truth. And as they say, know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And what is there to be free from? The only thing that need to be free from is the belief. Free from belief. A belief's not the actual. So any beliefs, you've got to toss them out. So where you go? You want to say something, Ken?
I have a few comments from people who are online. This is for you.
Thanks.
And this one. Oh, yeah. Hi everyone, we have about 30 plus people here who are online. Greetings of New Year. Nothing new or old, time is only stretch of thought or imagination only. Much gratitude and fun, that's from Amarnath. So Happy New Year everyone. And few comments onwards and hi, and Donna is working but she'll be with us. Melinda sending love. Amarnath also say I, image in, absence becoming presence, becoming, which does not come or go. And now Vivek says, realization equals unbecoming. And Amarnath says, remember. In realization, no member or membership.
Right.
Sweet.
Good, Emma.
Sweet and creative. Very nice. And everyone is already realized, but they don't know. And a lot of smiley faces and icons. Nowhere is a notion. There is only knowledge. I'll add disclaimer to that because Bob was just explaining, I know Amarnath that you know, and I also know that you were listening to, I think Ramana Maharshi was having an idea that there is only nowhere, which kind of is a solipsistic idea that only I exist and the rest is imagined, or only knowledge. What we say, and we kind of find it more perhaps accurate. It's a good starting point, absolutely, but more accurate would be to say there is a knowing, the process. And within that process there is a knowledge and nowhere if it is conceptualized or imagined in the head. But the knowing or being, seeing, that's the way Bob points at it. And he just explained it. So I hope you don't mind, Amarnath, that little comment. Nowhere is a notion, there is only knowledge. If there is a knowledge, there is always someone who know the knowledge. If there is a seen, there is someone, there is a seer. If there is a thought, there is a thinker. They kind of come interdependently. So if there is a thinking or the seeing or the knowing, you don't need to conceptualize the two ends of the stick. So it's kind of what we point, that there doesn't have to be the noun on the end of that process, ing, that happening. So Amarnath also says, why to become at all, then unbecome? Double trap, what's beyond becoming and unbecoming. And not that anyone has any choice to become or unbecome. Yes, there is beyond the concepts of becoming and unbecoming. Amarnath also says, stilled I am self. I am in movement is mind or world. That's a quote from Nisargadatta. Yeah. Stillness is potentiality and the movement is an expression. And God says the yoga certificate is the certificate of ignorance, referring to what Mark was sharing with us a couple of days ago. And Amarnath, with a lot of icons and little pictures, says, thanks a million, Bob. Prior to word or mind, only is, no, these is. And Aldo says good morning, and Bill, and Amarnath commenting on yoga certificate being certificate of ignorance. Mind equals certificate is not needed at all. Whatever mind says about self is not. We are already that. And Amarnath also says, we don't want to live in unknown, and that's a quote from Nisargadatta. And Jay says, thanks. Ram says, heart. Soham says, Bill. That was brilliant, Primali says. And Hilary says, good morning to Aldo. And label equals word equals mind equals ignorant. That's from Amarnath. And God says the thinker doesn't exist. Absolutely. It's a thought. The thinker is an idea. Amarnath, thanks Kat for this. Knowledge is ignorance. Only knowing is happening. Thank you. And that's it for the online comments. Thank you for that. And now we open it up for anyone to share or ask or add. So I'll just, leave it to the room. I'll give it to you. So, anyone? Oh, I just got the comment from John David right now. And it says, the pointer from Bob to be warm towards this presence or give it attention has been with me all day. It is a form of devotion or love, love towards being. This love spreads far and wide. Love you, Bob and Kat. We love you, John, too. It's a good pointer, yes. Be warm towards yourself. Anyone? Oopsie.
So, it's life is spontaneous. It's and the word spontaneous means uncaused. And this immediacy of cognition is spontaneous. So you won't find it in memory. It can't be stored in memory. It's always right here, right now. But to fixate on it requires a me, which is memory. So you can fixate and talk about the immediacy of cognition, and that can be stored in memory. Yeah. But the immediacy of naked cognition is timeless. It doesn't have a beginning or an end. And these stories about me and my life and blah, 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 that's all time-bound. And actually there's no one that's caught in that. There's no one caught in phenomena. And there's a beautiful saying from the Buddhist tradition which says the intrinsic nature of all phenomena is emptiness. And that can be recognized. It can be stored in memory, but it's not memory. Like Bob says, there's no answer in the mind, and we keep looking in the mind, or not. But there is no answer really. I mean, the question, who am I? What's the answer to that? It's actually silence and stillness, which is, there's no me there. There's no room for any me unless you fixate on it. So unfixating awareness is a beautiful pointer, but it can't be done. You can't do unfixating awareness. There's no one that can do that. It's actually the nature of awareness itself. So, lots of people get caught up in, well, that's an absurd thing to say, but there are not lots of people, but in the appearance, many seem to get caught on a kind of an accumulation of knowledge, but it's all about a self that's imagined, and if you just come back to that immediacy of naked cognition and let the mind be quiet, you can't add anything to it, you can't take anything away from it, because it is like space, What can you add to space? What can you take away from space? So, space like awareness. You can't buy it. You can't sell it.
Beautiful.
Can you give it away?
I tried.
Here you go, Bob, there's some space.
You say something? There you go.
I wasn't actually, but I will.
There you go.
So, with our thoughts, we create the world. And with words, we create the world, because without a word, without a thought, there's just this. There's no... the whole matrix of ideas and concepts are created, and then there's a seeming separation between me and the other. But take away the language, take away the words, and there's just this. And phenomena is intrinsically empty, because without words or without language there is no phenomena, there's just oneness. And even with words and language there is still oneness, but there's an appearance of separation.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I like when Bob sometimes says, without the word beginning, there is no beginning. Without the word world, there is no world. There is just what is. The beginning, the world, they are just concepts that interpreting services overlay on that mystery that we're looking at. I think there was another comment here. God is saying, I am conscious about thoughts happening in this body-mind, not in others. Consciousness happens without doership. Yeah, and computer is conscious of, one could say, about the pictures that one camera is seeing only from one direction. And does it say the computer has the consciousness? No, it's just a part of the instrument. If that sort of open space of awareness or absolute is using the instrument of the body, which has the camera located there, then obviously it is aware of the images getting through that camera and the thoughts getting through that whatever the circuit it is. So yeah, absolutely, that's the observation, and the expectation that it should be aware of other pictures or other sounds and other thoughts is just another thought. And without the thought, there is no expectation as such. And Amarnath says, hi Gilbert, seeing you after a long time, very happy to see you. Greetings and love. Appearance and disappearance are notions in self. And Tanya, beautiful. Thank you so much, Gilbert. Much gratitude for that sharing. Thank you. Anyone? David, would you like to say something? Oh.
Not at the moment.
Okay. Anything else comes up, Gilbert?
Yeah.
In the hot seat, Gilbert. Come on.
What?
You're in the hot seat.
I'm in the hot seat.
You want it, you appreciate it.
Yes.
How much do I get paid to
You're
sit in the
all
hot seat?
They hear you, they resonate.
Getting all the love and gratitude.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, can we find a mind? You know, our so-called our own mind. Can we actually find a mind? But it's, you can't find a mind. You can't pinpoint it. And yet, in the scheme of things, you know, like slavery to what other people think of us or what other people are thinking, you know, this is very common. Worrying about what somebody else is thinking about. Do they like me? Do they hate me? You know, blah blah blah. This is a narrative that goes on and enslaves the so-called individual. And instead of focusing on that, you know, come back to, as Bob says, watch the mind and see how it operates. This is a tremendous pointer. It's so short and sharp. You know, watch the mind and see how it operates. You know, it will reveal everything if you just take notice of what the mind is doing and how it operates. You know, if it is your mind, then you should know what it's doing and what's going on. And Nisargadatta says, you know, you cannot transcend something unless you know exactly what it is. So if you're suffering and you've got all these horrible things going on in your life because you're focused on all this nonsense, watch the mind, see how it operates. Freedom is there. Actually, we're already free. In essence, we're free. And we get caught up in this story and these battles and this Game of Thrones sort of thing. You know, the Game of Thrones was a TV thing, was very, very popular. Why was it popular? Because it touches on all of this drama of being a human being and who's, you know, the hierarchy and bend the knee to this one and that, and this one's trying to kill that and blah, blah, blah. And it's very popular because everyone can relate to it. You know, everyone, as a person, you can relate to it. But are you a person, as Bob says, you know? Are you a person? Find out. A persona, a mask, an actor. You know, actors sometimes used to wear masks on stage, particularly comedy actors. And, you know, at the end of the play, they hang the mask on the back of the door and they go home. They know that they're not the mask. So, investigate, see if you are a person.
Yeah, I'll have a go.
You'll have a go.
Yeah, I'll have a go.
All right.
Okay, so when I first came to Bob's, I remember him saying, "You're not the doer," you know. And for me, that was like incredibly liberating because I thought, great, all these crazy thoughts that are coming up in my mind, actually not me thinking, and there is no person here who's doing the thinking. And he advised examining the mind and looking at the mind. And to say the least, I've spent most of the so many years of after meeting Bob examining the mind, and you all have to look at your mind to see how crazy the mind is, how unreliable the mind is, you know, because it's just based on pure conditioning. It's, you know, I come from a Macedonian background, and we're all worrywarts, you know. It like everything can be going really fantastic, and the mind will be picking up all the negative things that are happening instead of focusing on the positive things that are happening. And you have a look at an Anglo culture and the conditioning that comes with the Anglo culture. They never talk about the elephant in the room. They don't want to talk about sadness and depression and stuff like that. So you can see that the mind isn't actually something that you are in control of. There isn't a person there controlling the mind. The mind is just taking its own course, doing its own thing. And so when Bob suggests just full stop, what he's trying to get you to do there is actually look at what's there before all that conceptualizing happens. So what's actually there? What is there without thinking? And when he talks about this labeling idea, you know, about there being seeing always, there being hearing. See, all that stuff is happening automatically, but as soon as something happens, the mind will come in and say, it is me, Areti, who sees Gilbert. So there's this division of this natural occurrence, so there's this natural happening of seeing and of hearing and of being, and it all gets translated because we taught to divide everything, you know, we're taught to you know, label everything. So these labels are sure they're labels and they serve a purpose in this living, right? But it's actually, we start to think that because we've labeled something, it actually exists separate to something else, you know, and like as Bob says, try and take anything out of space. Everything exists in space. It can't exist independently. Nothing can exist independently. We're all here in space, not all of us, but you know, we're talking about this totality, this thing that we divide up into all of its parts. It's all here immediately. It can't be taken out of space. You can't exist outside of air. You can't exist without food, right? And yet we've labelled all these individual items, and we've assumed that they're actually separate. Just by labelling them, we separate them, you know. So this seeing is happening automatically, quietly, in the quietness of the mind. It's just automatically there, the seeing, the hearing. You don't have to say, I see, to know that you're seeing. You don't have to say, I hear, to know that you're hearing, or there's hearing. I shouldn't say that you're hearing. It's just that we take ownership of everything, you know, and we think that we're the decider and the chooser of things, you know, like I've seen it because I sit quietly so often, you know, just to sit, to try not to get into this, the drama of life that we just kind of pulled into all the time, you know, of I've got so many friends, I've got all this money, I'm going to acquire and accumulate and take and try and build this so that it feels safe. The safety is in the quietness, and in that quietness I've noticed there's noticing that there's just movement automatically happens, and the mind will come in and say, oh, I chose to eat, or I'm hungry now, you know, instead of recognizing that actually all behavior, all actioning is happening automatically. So everything is happening automatically, and the mind loves juice. It loves the drama, you know. It's been taught to dramatize everything. It's like, and another thing too. Think about this. Think about how you might wake up in the morning and you go, "Oh, I'm such a loser," you know, and then by the evening you think, "I'm the best thing since sliced bread," you know. And now, how reliable is that mind? You know, the way that it's shifting and changing all the time, telling you how fantastic you are one minute, and the next minute you're an absolute loser. So why are you relying on this mind to navigate the world and assuming that there's some truth or reality to the mind and the way that the mind interprets things? The interpretation that you give, or the mind is giving to the world, is just this automatic pilot. It's like a programmed computer. That's all you are. You're an automaton. You're functioning like we're all, when we're engaging in the thinking of the mind, we're like automatons, you know. We're just doing everything automatically, like we've been conditioned to do, you know, instead of like recognizing that this is just conditioning, you know, and it's not, and it's that conditioning that holding on to, I want to be this kind of person, I want to be an artist and creative, I want to have 50 million friends, I want to be really rich, and then when you can't, and you tell yourself I'm rich, and all of a sudden you lose your money and you're not rich anymore. And so, like, what's happened? You know, I'm not the person I thought I was. This image I've created for myself and that I want everyone to perceive me as being has crumbled, right? That's where the drama is. It can't hold up. It can't hold up. You can't fix anything. This life is constantly changing. You can't fixate or fix anything of an image of you. This is who I am. I'm this beautiful, thin, young, and then all of a sudden you're getting old, and it's, oh my God, oh look at me, I'm old, right? And it's this fixation with the image, instead of sitting back in that, like it's so peaceful, you know, and yet the mind is always trying to latch on to more drama, you know, and it's the drama that's conditioned and dramatizing. If you just sit back, you know, and even just smile at what the mind is coming up with, there's even a sort of a remove from that storytelling, and there's a kind of a peace there, the peace that passeth all understanding. It's not about understanding. It's not about the head. It's not about building up more information about what this thing is. It's about transcending, or not. Well, you already are that. You already are transcendent, but you're fixating on the mind, and you're like this little image that you're painting of yourself, instead of actually the totality of everything. You know, in the silence, there's just this. There's no me, you. There's just the being. You know, the just lifing.
Beautiful. Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's you know, we sometimes turn the mind into the enemy, you know, and blame the mind, but there is no mind without thinking. So, you know, the mind is not conditioned. There's no mind that's conditioned. It's just patterns. But yeah, good. What you said was great.
How about you, Mark?
I just have a comment from someone saying that this is Aldo. Gee, Gilbert, if you had told me Mark was going down, I would have come down. Yeah, how sweet. And there is a couple of more comments.
He needs to come down.
I'll just get a couple of more comments. Tanya says, there is nothing that the mind thought are quite often worries, things to be done, etc. These thoughts aren't so relevant, and there is no doer or future or thinker. Sometimes a thought appears... Oh, just come on. Sometimes a thought appears, you are believing in this idea, thought or concept again, but then recognizing I am not thought, but that which is aware of thought, there is no mind. And Aldo says, just kidding, I had a New Year's function and I had bought into. And God says the mind takes the ownership of watching. And yeah, that's a good point. Watch the mind. Oh, I'm the mind watching the mind. Sweet. And now there is that he is the loop. He is in the loop. The mind is in the loop, or he is in the loop. That's also God. And Vivek says, well said, safety in the quietness. Yeah, this was beautiful. I really loved both of you just pointed out this really vital aspect of the whole identification with the mask or with the persona or with that ever-changing image. Like if you really see how many faces or how many masks you have throughout the day, not just the image of, oh, I'm a woman or I am a Scorpio or I am or whatever, type this or type that, or happy or unhappy, or old or young, or pretty, or Macedonian, or Polish, or whatever. It's just moment to moment, that sort of a costume that we're wearing is appropriate to the environment to respond. When I speak to my mother, I'm the daughter, I'm not the teacher. Never a teacher, by the way. But it is really interesting to look at those images or those costumes or those masks emerging out of nowhere, because once you're looking, and a good point, God, who is looking? Who cares? Is the looking happening in that looking or in that seeing? The mind comes up and it narrates, the narrating happening. Yes, as Gilbert said, there is no such thing as mind, it is a concept. So the narrating happening, the imaging happening, imagining happening, all that is happening in the conscious open space that you are, in that gaze or that looking or that knowing. Safety in a quietness, that Vivek says, this is such a vital point. There is no safety in gathering stuff for future or conceptualizing and predicting whatever can happen tomorrow, because there is no tomorrow. And the function of the narrative, which is providing, which is, let's say, warning people about this, that, and the other, is to be totally appreciated, but taken lightly, because it is a mechanical function. It is an evolutionary tool to be able to tell the stories and relate to the same stories. Suddenly we are all non-duality, or we are all seekers, or we all Aussies, and we can relate and we can gather and we can do something together. Beautiful evolutionary tool, but is there any truth in it? It's a beautiful, entertaining story to be appreciated. And that's it, just like evolutionary tool of lungs and breathing. No story needed about it. Amarnath also says, beautiful, mind feeds on problems and complaints or conflicts or divisions or separation. Yes, it is actually wired to the survival of the body. So it focuses first on any threats. That's why all the news agency, they know to get your attention, they have to report a blood, a tragedy, a drama, or catastrophe, because the reptilian part of the brain is wired to give it a priority, because that's how the body stays here. That's how we hear. And even that's a story, but it kind of allows to see it in a light, in a joyous light sort of a way. Oh, okay, that's what the machine does. Cool. That's how it functions. Amarnath says, fixation and unfixation are notions. Well, that's what's happening. And beautiful conditioning and unconditioning are notions. Thanks, Gilbert, to whom they are. And only present, says Ram. Only present, and all the E's are of the shape of the euro. So, did you want to say something, Dean?
I think there's no safety in this whatsoever. Like it's total. It's when these things are realised, there's no safe place for anyone or anything. It's the freshness and the newness is constant, and there's no fixated position that to start or finish or anticipate or all these notions are just finished, and it's just a bubbling up of nothing appearing in infinite ways, including a thought saying blah blah, or including an image on the wall, and it's all appearing in the same space, and it actually becomes. It's like I remember Gilbert actually said, is there any conditioning if you don't think about it, and it's like there's no conditioning. There never was. It's a spontaneous happening and arising like now, and there's no safety in it or a safe place, and it doesn't need to be, because it's far more. You sort of start to see that you could say it's a whole expression out of love, which is far more fascinating and beyond fascination, really, because it's just what the hell knows what the hell's going on, but something's going on, and it's just and there's no labels, so it's bloody hilarious and stupid and ridiculous, and any other adjective you want to add to it, but
Nothing sticks.
no,
You can say whatever you want about it.
yeah.
And there's nothing.
It's so much more fun though, like there's nothing, there's even fun, like it's just it's crazy.
Did you want to say something?
Nothing can be separate from it.
No, nothing could be separate. Say it.
You say nothing sticks, nothing can be separate from it. There's nothing other than that. It's all that.
And a seeking for safety, for what? For the body, for the mind, for who? And a safety is kind of implying some sort of a permanence, and that's an idea that is quite ridiculous. There's nothing that lasts. Everything can blow. You sometimes says the whole planet with the civilization could blow off right in this minute and nothing would be lost.
What about me?
Yeah.
Bob, I'd love to hear you speak about this peace that passeth understanding, and how that manifests in your life, because you hear so many words, and at a certain point you just get saturated, and I don't have that, where I have a belief maybe that I don't have that peace, the peace that I want, the peace that motivates me to come here. And so I'd love to hear your experience.
My darling, here.
What's peace? It's silence, it's stillness, it's wordless. So you say any words in it, it won't be peaceful. What's wrong with right now if you don't think about it? Pause the thought and have a look at that for a moment or two. Can you postulate or think of anything without a thought, without a word? No words, no thoughts. What must be there then? Silence, stillness, peace. Right here, right now. Is it so there? Right.
Quite often, quite often over the years, various people have had that moment of recognising that, and then they say, "Yeah, Bob, but it's really boring." It's like boring, because we want the entertainment of the colourful to and fro, but there it is. It's like without a thought. There is a natural peacefulness there, isn't there? You can't add anything to it or take anything away from it. So it's innately already here. It's like I say the wakefulness, which is what that peaceful cognition is perfect in everyone. Absolutely every sentient being has that wakefulness that's perfect. But the things that we put on it, the concepts and the ideas that bubble up on it, seemingly make it imperfect. But it doesn't. It never vibrates into an opposite, because it's perfect. What's that saying about the perfect? If from the perfect we
Perfect is
taken, only the perfect remains. That's an old saying from Hindu, I think. Yeah. So it's perfect, and if you take the perfect away from it, only the perfect remains. So it's not about gaining something. Seeking is actually an absurd idea, because what we're seeking we already are. So it's like you don't have to leave your house to be at home, but that's what we do. We go out there looking for something. Like the other thing about what Bob's pointing is that young child picks up this idea of I or me, and then at some point he looks out and he sees something and he says, "That's not me. That's not me." And that's the first idea of separation, and then there's a sense of vulnerability, because that's not me. But then eventually everything, you realise that everything is not me. There's me and there's all not me, and I feel vulnerable. So then I idealise something out in the not me that I have to get and acquire to make this me feel safe. And the only way is to be the not me, be all of the not me, and not the me. Whatever that means.
Yes.
Wow, where did that come from? You want to say something?
I got a couple of comments from online. Bob wanted Mark to say something also. Did you, Mark, want to say something or after?
Got some comments.
After, okay. I'll hand it over after. I also had that Bob has the way, what you, David, asked about the finding the peace is actually a nice way to look at it. If the peace is always there, because that peace is kind of a birthright, it is the beingness, the pure beingness. What obscures it? What moves us away from that, from staying in touch in that lively, empty, conscious awareness of space? And it's usually the travel of attention and engagement with the thinking. And usually the thinking that is about danger, or what's going to happen to me, or do they like me, all that stuff which presents some threat for the body. This is where habitually attention gets scattered and what takes us away from that naturalness. Like when you go to sleep at night and the thoughts drop away, that peacefulness takes you to a deep sleep. You wake up in the morning, before you even think what day of a week is there, you relax, the whole body is kind of totally relaxed in that peaceful state. And then the thought comes up, oh my gosh, I have to go to work. Oh, I have to resolve this, or this, or this. Or I and my story and my drama. That's usually what takes the peace away. And that's usually what needs to be looked at, because those are the clouds. But the peace is always there. If not for that peace, the distraction or the obstruction of the peace wouldn't be possible. But as Gilbert was saying, for the mind, peaceful state is empty, is boring, is unbearable, is horrible, is not entertaining, is shit. But for the heart, the heart of the essence, it is home. You're home. You're coming back to... Yes, and when you are in touch with that heart of being, that loving to be, that joy of being, then whatever thoughts appear and whatever thoughts have to say, oh, I'm going to die of cancer, oh, I'm going to get, my house is going to... You take it lightly. It's like, yeah, whatever. It's just some talking going on. That's not my talking. That's not me talking. That's just some narrative going on. Because attention, part of that attention is out of the mind, in that open conscious space of being, observing, knowing. That's where the freedom is. And then if the mind appears, the thought, the drama, the thinking appears, it is an entertainment. You laugh. Even if the thoughts tell you, oh, you piece of shit, you're horrible, you're going to die, you're going to fire you. You laugh. Because you know that's just thought. You just hear that mechanical sort of a narrative. You also understand that it is there because it really wants the good and the opposite. You know, if the thought is telling you, oh, your boss is hating you, is going to fire you. Why? Oh, just mobilize, you know, let him love you and not fire you. That's always love. But it's still just a chatter. So if you know where the home is, you just see the chatter the way it is. There's just a chatter. Who cares? Who would even listen to it? And if so, only for entertaining purposes. Later on, when you actually know the truth of who you are, and you are, whether you know it or not, that conscious being. You can't deny your being. You can't deny your consciousness. So you are that anyway. So that's a way to look at it, which I find really helpful when Bob says you are already that. See what moves you away and obscures it. And you will see that is just thought one at a time, image one at a time. And if you look at them, you're already looking from beyond the thought, because you can't really see the thought being a thought. You can't be identified as a thought and see yourself, like I can't see itself. So to actually be able to see the mind activity, you are already the open conscious space of awareness in which that activity shows up. You're not the activity. You're free from it. That's why the pointer is so potent, to just witness that mechanical behavior, that responses, that tastes, preferences, all of it, as completely impersonal, part of the conditioning of what this body developed to be well in the interaction with the environment from which it isn't separate. So you basically learn what is this body, this character, these behaviors, what are they? Interesting, fascinating, but that's not who you are, not what you are, because you are the knowing. And now I just read quickly and give Mark the speaker, because peace is there when the mind is not. That's Amarnath quoting Bob. Yeah, and the mind doesn't have to be shut down for long. Microsecond is enough, because when the mind stops, and you still don't stop, you're still existing. Even if the mind is shut down, the gap between the thought, or when you are engaged in listening to music, beauty, sex, food, whatever, and there's no commentary going on, you exist. And then the commentary comes. So the existence is there prior to commentary coming and going. So the commentary doesn't have to stop, it can go on. Only the quick insight that even without it, there is the pure live existence. When the attention rests more in that silence, like Areti was saying, that's the safety, that's the deliciousness, that's the bliss. Then the entertainment comes and it spoils it a little bit, or maybe it spices it a little bit. It's not a bad thing. But yeah, there it is. Thinking without thinker is spontaneous, automatic mode of self, should not be confused with the mind. That's Amarnath. Thinking without thinker. It's just what's happening here. Mind is just a label. We know the truth. This peacefulness is hijacked by the mind consciously, says God. Yeah, the habit is a habitual narrative, which is also an evolutionary tool, which is useful. It's just not to be blindly believed, because the byproduct of blindly believing a narrative is suffering. So that can be questioned. That doesn't have to be there. And Amarnath says, beautiful, Gilbert, waking from the waking state. And that doesn't exist, says God. And God. And Aldo says, this is perfect, take a perfect from the perfect, the reminder is perfect. That's a nice little twist on the Guru Gita. Thank you, Aldo. And God says, and the separation is experienced. Only when you think about it. It is experienced then. Without the thought, it's just what is. Without the thought that you have the body, you don't really have the body. Without the thought you have the face, you don't have the face. It's just what is. Movement of energy or life or whatever. That's the label too. Primali says seeking is no use because we seek from childhood, and what is left is unsatisfaction. Who is seeking? Stop seeking brings more peace. Absolutely beautiful. And even that is not in your hands. You're not the doer. But yes, that's good recognition. I'm on Facebook and get to watch again. Welcome, Donna. If not with a client, Bob looks great. I agree. Amarnath says mind equals separate center. And Amarnath replying to Primali, seeking without seeker still can happen, but ultimately to lose everything or to get nothing. Yeah, even without conceptualizing, there is a movement that which you, I think, Amarnath quote before, that movement of life is mind or is the world. Movement of self is the world. That's the love, which brings 10,000 things. Doesn't have to be labeled. Now Tanya says, thank you. Nothing insightful to add to the wonderful clear sharing and pointers, and a lot of hearts in there. Thank you, Tanya. And Julia, American Julia says, the byproduct of blindly believing a narrative is suffering. Beautiful, Kat. Thank you, Julia. And see you tomorrow, Bob. Thank you, Kat and Bob. Love you both. Yes, looking forward to seeing you. Although when you get back here, I guess Zoom. Tomorrow is Zoom for mostly Americans, but anyone is welcome at 9:30 Melbourne time. It is Saturday evening in America. Julia is hosting and Bob is speaking. And all the links on Bob's website, silorBobAdamson.com. And now, Mark, please.
I nearly fell asleep then. Yeah, so interesting that we talk about, notice that we're aware, and the awareness is constantly there, and very, very subtle, and all through your life, 1 year old, 2 year old, 10, 15, now an old man, pretty soon kaput. But the awareness hasn't been touched. It sort of hasn't grown old or hasn't suffered a single hurt, drama, or a trauma, and it's no thing to the mind. See, it's for, you're not unaware right now, and what that awareness is, you won't be able to grasp with any particular concept, but you can't say I'm not aware. So it's there constantly, and this world that we're taking to be real, appearance world, and even this conversation is taking place basically in a dream. It's appearing in the awareness, and all these thoughts that are arising, can those thoughts dominate the awareness, or affect the awareness? These thoughts are the product of the awareness, and they're trying to tell the awareness how to be aware or what to do, And I thought it's a good instrument. It's a useful tool. But this world that you're taking to be so substantial, we're sitting here and there's a conversation in this room. Do you notice that in deep sleep there's no world there at all when you're asleep? If the world was real, including this conversation, why wouldn't it be there in the sleep? So it's Maya. It's an appearance, And if it's seen as an appearance, you enjoy it. You can enjoy it as an appearance, But this awareness constantly keep returning to ask yourself, am I aware? Or say, yes, obviously I am aware, When I'm sitting in this room, and notice the awareness and remain as the awareness. Don't sort of get fixated on the thinking. The thought as Nasaga that I said, it's a good servant, but it's a terrible master because it's sort of limited, And if that's understood, then you function just like everybody else. You use the thinking, but the thinking doesn't use you, more or less. Generally it's using us, but it doesn't have the power to do anything like that unless you've, through unawareness, you're letting it sort of build up a story or move off. So much for Eckhart Tolle and the power of now, He says, and it's good to be in the... Try and get out of the now. You never leave the now, But if you step off the so-called razor's edge and go off into the past and future, well, you're down in the abyss, more or less. You're never in the abyss, but the presence, in the presence is the fullness. The fullness of life, as Christ said. About presence is not a personal presence. Awareness is not personal. It's contained person, impersonal. But in this presence is the fullness, and normally we want to divide the presence or whatnot up, heaven and hell, but awareness is constantly there, and you're not unaware. Now that awareness is unborn, unceasing. It's ever. What I just said then, it's gone. The awareness is still there, untouched, But it's very subtle, and the mind don't like subtlety. It wants things black and white and solid, But a good analogy is the Zen master's analogy. The Zen say, leave your back door open, your front door open, let thoughts come and go, but don't serve them tea. Because if you give them any air, they'll say, they'll build up a massively big story. So what's the basis? The basis is that nothing has happened at all. The world hasn't been created. Reality has not changed. You're unaware. So notice that, and you're still aware. Awareness is no thing, but it's you can't negate it. It's still, you are that. You are the supreme reality. Be still and know that I am God. Not the ego, but the person, the present. Everyone is sort of that. So reality can't change. So if you think it's changing, investigate and see if it is. See if you've moved away from awareness or consciousness, whatever label you put to it. And the consciousness is shining by the light of awareness. You see, and in deep sleep, awareness is there whether you're alive or dead or anywhere. The awareness is not changing. Because even in deep sleep you're not aware of anything. I don't mean dreaming, but in deep sleep there's no world, no consciousness as we know it, and yet on awaking in the morning you said, I had a good sleep. So awareness was there constantly. It's there now and it'll always be there 24/7. So it's just a matter of noticing it, and you could ask yourself, am I unaware?
Well, obviously you're not, you know. So you are aware, you know. The mind will tell you you're not aware enough, whatever it tells you. But it's a good servant, but it's not a master, and it divides things, you know, whatever. That's just nature, analysis paralysis, and it analyses, and that has a place in the appearance, more or less, you know. But observer and observed, hearer and heard, and when we were in Bombay, and the Nisargadatta said to us back in 76 or 77, said there's a public talk today by Krishnamurti, and attend it if you like, and come back and tell us what you think about it, you know, whether he's on the money or not, you know. But it was amazing because he's appeared, 20,000 people there, birds singing and making a noise, quite noisy, but he mounts the dais, you know, full of dignity and all that, you know, and just seeing the man, he just as a sage, is just so much dignity, and you see that he's living it, you know. And then he pulls the rug out from under you. He takes a seat, and he said, is the speaker sane or insane? And now the speaker has no authority, so don't put him into authority, make him into a guru, and that's what you're doing, you know. And it's sort of, but you couldn't help it, because as it was pouring out, you just feel sort of so much grace and dignity in the man, you know, left an amazing legacy. But every one of us is capable of that. But his pointer went on to the fact about the observer and the observed. Bob said the hearer and the heard, the thinker and the thought. But it's not divided. There's the thinking. But if the observer is the observed, non-duality. So normally, whatever comes up, anger, fear, in daily life, say fear, anger, or violence, you know, jealousy, whatever. But those things, what is fear? What is anger? What is jealousy? Basically, it's a type of an energy. Everything is energy. So if the observer is the observed, and anger comes up here, or fear, and I say, normally I would act on it and say I shouldn't be angry, but if the observer is the observed, I am the anger, I can't do anything about it at all. I can't act on it. So seeing that, it has to disappear, because I'm not angry, I don't want to be angry, right? But say, that's just another way of seeing the observer is the observer, the hearer and the heard. There's no entity except thought is making up the thinker and the thought, and they're just the thinking, the seeing, the observing, without the observer and the observed. See, the mind, for practical purposes, is dividing it up into you and me. But is there a you and me apart from awareness? There's not. So there's a oneness there. You know. Anyway, that's enough.
Yeah, I got a couple of final comments. Thank you, Mark. And Julia was just, I probably said it wrongly, the Zoom, exact time on a Zoom is on Bob's website. It is Saturday afternoon, Sunday afternoon, early evening. Did it again. I'm not the doer. And Julia says, if the world was real, it would be present in a deep sleep because reality never changes. Beautiful, Mark. And Michael say, my goodness gracious, what an amazing, beautiful bunch of souls you have here today. Thank you, Bob and Kat. Much love to you both, and thank you for such a brilliant discourse. And I should say souls, he says, C-O-L-E. Just right, just one, right? Yeah, not the three. How many souls are there?
3.
Yep. Michael says 1. I didn't say it. Yes, so what was it? 2 soles of the feet? And the asshole.
2 soles of the feet and your asshole.
There you go. Yes, so thank you, souls. And thank you, everyone. And shall we go for lunch?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Pizza time.